Right now, billion-dollar battles are being fought over your money and your information, from the oil fields of the Middle East to the secret budget rooms of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's a massive web of conflict, and the ripple effects are heading straight for your wallet.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission for you today. We're looking at a huge stack of sources from the spring of 2026.
Right, we've got news reports from Washingtonian today, the 51st, plus, official D.C. Council budget documents and legal filings.
Exactly. And our goal is to unpack these hidden battles over power and resources that are happening right now. But a quick ground rule before we dive in. We are looking at some highly charged documents today involving figures across the political spectrum.
Right, like President Trump and Mayor Bowser.
Yes. And our only mission here is to decode the facts for you. We don't take sides. We don't endorse any politicians or policies. We just follow the paper trail so you can understand what's actually happening.
Exactly. We're just here to break down the mechanics of these events.
So let's jump right into the global situation, because the context here is intense. According to the Washingtonian, President Trump's military conflict in Iran has now hit its 13th day.
And the financial toll is just staggering. I mean, the Pentagon reported that this conflict cost over $11 billion in just the first 6 days alone.
$11 billion in 6 days.
Yeah, and that instability is directly hitting the energy markets. Oil prices have spiked past $100 a barrel.
Wow.
And Iran is actively threatening to drive that price up to $200 a barrel by targeting shipping routes.
Which means you are feeling it at the pump right now. The national average for gas is sitting at $3.598 a gallon.
Right, and the administration is scrambling. The president authorized releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
And this is key, that oil won't actually hit the market for about 120 days. So the immediate pain at the pump, that remains.
Meanwhile, the conflict itself is incredibly chaotic. There's a really tragic report of a U.S. strike hitting an elementary school, leaving 175 people dead.
Yeah, the U.S. investigation actually found the military culpable, noting the school was on a target list and may have been mistaken for a military site.
It's awful. And back at the Pentagon, things are really tense in the briefing room, too. They actually banned photographers from war briefings.
Wait, really? Why?
Simply because they published photos of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth that his staff deemed unflattering.
Seriously? Just for unflattering photos?
Yeah, it's a highly volatile situation globally, politically, and economically.
Okay, so while the federal government is focused outward on these billion-dollar overseas conflicts, there is a completely different battle over resources happening right in their backyard in Washington, D.C.
Right. It's a parallel crisis of governance. Because when you have massive global economic pressures like spiking oil prices and inflation, local city budgets get incredibly tight.
Yeah, local governments suddenly have to squeeze every single penny just to keep the lights on.
Exactly. Which brings us to a massive $180 million stare down between the federal government and the local government of D.C.
Okay, let's look under the hood of that local squeeze. How did this stare down actually start?
Well, to understand it, you have to look at how D.C. tried to raise revenue. The city passed a law to decouple from recent federal tax cuts.
Decouple? That sounds pretty technical.
It is a technical term, but the mechanism is actually pretty simple. Basically, the federal government decided to stop collecting taxes on certain things, like tips and overtime pay.
Okay.
But D.C. looked at its budget and said, we can't afford to lose that money, so we're going to keep taxing those things locally.
Oh, wow. So this includes taxes that directly affect everyday workers. Like, if you live or work in D.C. and you earn tips or work overtime, you will owe city taxes on that income, even if the federal government gives you a pass.
Right. D.C. did this because they desperately need the revenue. This decoupling maneuver is designed to generate $180 million this fiscal year alone.
That's huge.
And if you look out to the year 2030, it represents $700 million for the city.
Okay, that is a massive chunk of change. But here is where the unique setup of Washington, D.C. complicates everything. D.C. is not a state like Maryland or Virginia.
Right, exactly.
Because it's a federal district, Congress essentially acts as its ultimate city council.
Yeah.
Under the 1973 Home Rule Act, Congress has the power to block D.C. laws.
They do. The Home Rule Act gives Congress a strict 30-day window to review and disapprove local D.C. legislation. So Congress tried to use this power to block D.C.'s new tax law.
Okay.
The House of Representatives voted on time to block it. But the Senate voted 1 day late.
Wait, 1 day late, just 1 day.
Just one single day. And because of that missed deadline, D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab issued a formal legal opinion. He ruled that the congressional block is invalid.
Because they missed the window.
Exactly. The strict timelines of the Home Rule Act matter. Since the Senate missed the 30-day window, the local tax law legally stands.
Okay, let's unpack this. Legally, the top lawyer for the city says D.C. gets to keep its law and collect that $180 million. You'd think the case is closed.
You would think so.
But here's the twist. D.C.'s chief financial officer, a guy named Glenn Lee, is refusing to include that money in his official budget estimates anyway.
Yeah, he says there's too much uncertainty because Congress technically passed a resolution against it, even if they were late.
I mean, it's like a referee blowing the whistle to end the game, but the scorekeeper refuses to put the winning points on the board because they don't like the call.
That is the exact right way to look at it. And what's fascinating here is the mechanism behind that immense power.
Right. Why does an unelected CFO have the power to overrule the elected mayor, the council, and the attorney general?
You have to look back at the 1990s. D.C. was on the verge of bankruptcy. So Congress created this unique independent CFO role specifically to prevent the city from spending money it didn't have.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the CFO's job is to certify that the city's budget is balanced based on realistic revenue projections. If the CFO says the money isn't secure enough to count, the city literally cannot spend it.
So what does this actually mean for the city today, like practically speaking?
Well, it forces the mayor and the D.C. council into a corner. They built a budget expecting $180 million to be there.
Right.
If the CFO freezes those funds, the city suddenly has a massive hole. They have to scramble to cut planned expenditures or find alternative revenue sources.
Which highlights the limited autonomy D.C. has compared to regular states, right?
Oh, absolutely. Regular states decouple from federal tax provisions all the time without anyone batting an eye. But because D.C.'s is a federal territory, a single procedural hiccup in the U.S. Senate creates enough fear and uncertainty to completely freeze the city's finances.
Wow. So the city is fighting the federal government just to keep its own tax revenue. But while local leaders are fighting Congress for money, they're actually fighting each other for basic information.
Yeah. This is a classic separation of powers battle, and it has reached an absolute boiling point.
We're talking about a years-long war raging between D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the D.C. Council over something called budget enhancement requests.
Right.
And I was looking at these in our sources, and initially I thought they were just like bureaucratic wish lists. But they're actually the raw data of what the city needs before the politicians get their hands on it, right?
Yes, that's exactly what they are. Early in the budget season, different city agencies like the Department of Transportation or the public school system tell the mayor's office what they need to function.
Okay.
They submit documents detailing their funding requests. These show what the experts on the ground actually need before the mayor trims everything down to create her final proposal.
So the council, which actually have to approve the budget, wants to see those original requests. They want the raw data.
Correct. The council argues that to properly scrutinize the mayor's budget, they need to know what the agencies originally asked for.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it allows them to see what got cut and decide if they agree with the mayor's spending priorities. And there's actually a 2-decade-old city law requiring the executive branch to hand these specific documents over.
But playing devil's advocate here, doesn't the mayor have a point? She claims executive privilege. She says her office needs to have candid discussions while formulating the budget.
That's her main argument, yeah.
I mean, if every rough draft and agency wish list is made public, wouldn't department heads just stop being honest in writing out of fear of public backlash?
That is the exact argument the mayor makes. She believes that if every preliminary funding request is public, it creates a political circus before she even has a chance to balance the budget.
Oh, I see.
Her chief of staff even sent a memo to all agency heads explicitly ordering them to withhold these documents from the council to protect that internal process. But the counter-argument is about the power of the purse. The council argues that as a co-equal branch of government, they can't make informed decisions if the
Imagine finding
executive
out your
branch
electric
hides the raw
bill is
data.
secretly
Which
funding
sets
the
up a
government's
massive
legal
spending
collision.
addiction.
A public
It is
interest
a
law firm
pretty
called
shocking
Terrace,
realization when you
Pravlik,
actually
and
look at the
Millian,
math.
or TPM,
Well,
actually
imagine for a
sued the
second
mayor
that you have a
to
savings
get
account.
these very same documents under the
And,
Freedom of Information Act.
You
Right.
swore to your family
And in 2025,
hand over
the D.C. Court of
heart that
Appeals,
this money was strictly
the
for
highest
fixing
local
a leaking
court,
roof.
ruled against
You
the
said,
mayor. If we don't fix this roof,
explicitly ordered her to
the house is
release
gonna
the
collapse.
documents.
It's an
And she still
existential crisis
refused.
for the
Which
house.
is wild.
Exactly. It's
And
the
the consequence
consequence
for that is even wilder.
Then, your car
A
breaks
superior
down,
court judge
spend a little
stepped
too
in
much
and
on
held the
groceries,
district
you've
in
got bills
contempt of
piling
court.
up. So
The
what do you
judge
do?
imposed
You
a
raid the roof fund.
$1,500
Take that
daily
money,
fine
pay off your credit
until the
cards,
documents
and
are
tell your
released.
family, hey, don't worry, we'll
Serious
fix the
penalty.
roof later.
And we need to be
Right.
very clear here.
And in this scenario,
The mayor is not
the
paying
roof
that
is the
fine out of
plan,
her own pocket.
or at least
Your
Maryland's
taxpayer money
climate
is paying that
goals. And the car
$1,500
is a
daily
massive
fine
self-inflicted
while these politicians sue each other.
Exactly.
$5 billion
And now seeing this happen,
state budget
Council Chairman
deficit.
Phil
A completely
Mendelson and the
avoidable
D.C.
deficit, I
Council
might add.
have
Welcome
officially
to the deep
sued the
dive.
mayor themselves.
Today
to get
we're
the records.
exploring a
It is
classic
a remarkable
case of fiscal sleight of
escalation.
hand
Okay,
coming
here's
out
where
of
it gets
Annapolis.
really interesting.
We're
to
looking
me.
at the Strategic Energy
Risking
Investment
a
Fund,
daily fine
the SAFE,
paid by taxpayers.
It's a huge
and
pot
an
of money
unprecedented
meant to
lawsuit
save
from
the
your own
environment.
city council.
But it's turning into a
just
hidden
to keep
tax
initial
on
budget
every single
requests
person
a secret,
paying an electric
seems
bill
extreme.
in Maryland.
It
What
really
is so
is. It's become the
dangerous
center
about
of a
these documents?
huge
Well, if
political
we
fight.
connect this to the
You've
bigger
got
picture,
a Democratic
it's all about the
governor,
mechanics of
frustrated
modern power.
environmentalists making some very
Information
awkward
is the literal
compromises,
lifeblood
and
of the
conservative
budget
critics who
process.
are
Right.
rightly calling
In
this
modern
whole thing a
bureaucracy,
shell game.
A
The
shell
entity
game.
that controls the first
And when you
draft
look
of
at the
budget
documents we have
controls the
today,
final law.
reports,
If the
budget
council doesn't
proposals,
know what the
critiques
agencies
from Senate
originally asked
Republicans,
for, they are
it is
flying blind.
really hard
They
to
don't know, they
unsee
don't
it.
know.
Our mission
Exactly.
for this deep dive is simple.
They can only debate
Follow
the
money.
numbers the mayor
Always
chooses to
follow
show
the
them.
money.
We are
By
going to
controlling the
see
information
how a
flow, the
fund
mayor
designed
controls
to
the
fight
narrative
climate
and
change
severely limits
is
the
being used
council's
to plug
ability to
holes in
challenge
the
her.
state
So
budget.
process is
And we'll
power.
dig into the
Precisely.
argument that
But
this
the
isn't
courts
found
have
money at
consistently
all.
ruled
This is
that this
essentially a
specific
backdoor
budget
tax on
information
families.
belongs to the
Let's
public
get right
and
into
the
it.
legislature,
The
not just
Strategic
the
Energy
mayor's inner
Investment
circle.
Fund. It sounds
Which
very
brings us to a
official,
crucial
very
point.
important. What does it actually
All
do?
of this,
Well,
the
on
$180
paper,
million
It is the
stare down with
state's
the
green
CFO,
piggy bank.
the lawsuits
SIF
over
is
budget
managed by the
documents,
Maryland Energy
it can sound like
Administration. Its whole
politicians
stated
just
purpose
bickering
is
over
to reduce
paperwork in a
energy bills,
vacuum.
Yeah, it can
cut
seem pretty
waste,
dry.
and fund
But these
renewable
fights
energy.
have very
Like solar
real,
panels and
very
efficiency
severe
upgrades.
consequences
Exactly.
for everyday people.
But here is
They
the real
absolutely
aha
do.
moment
When
of
the
this story.
executive and legislative branches go
Where
to
does the
war,
money
the people
actually
who rely
come
on
from?
city services
Because
get
they
caught in
aren't
the
just
crossfire.
taxing you directly.
And
for
nowhere
it.
is that more
No,
obvious
and that's why
than in the
politicians
battle
absolutely
over
love it.
SNP
It feels
funding.
free. Right.
So about
SNAP
40%
is the
comes from
Supplemental
regional
Nutrition
carbon
Assistance
auctions.
Program, what
But
used
the
to be
big
called
chunk,
food
the
stamps.
one growing like crazy,
In
comes from something
2024,
called
the D.C.
alternative
Council passed a
compliance
law called the
payments,
Give
or
SNP a Raise
ACPs,
Amendment
Which is just a
Act.
fancy government term
And they
for
didn't
a
just
fine.
pass the
Right.
law.
It's a
They
fine for
legally funded
failure.
it.
Let me break
They
it down.
specifically
Maryland law
earmarked
forces
$40
utility
million
companies to
in the
buy a
budget
certain
to
amount
give
of green energy. They
140,000
have to prove
residents
they're using
a
renewables.
10%
But if they
increase
can't
in their
find
food
that green
benefits.
energy, or
To
if
put
it's
that
just
in
way too
perspective,
expensive
that's
on
an
the
extra
market,
Which
$47 a
it
month
usually
for
is.
individuals
state
who are
gives
just
them
trying
an
to feed
escape
themselves
hatch.
and their
The
families.
utility can just
And
pay
the
a fee
need
directly
is
to the
extreme.
state instead.
Let's look at
That
the
fee
stats
is
from the
ACP.
sources.
And here's
D.C.
the kicker.
residents pay 10%
Utilities
more
are
than the national
increasingly
average for
just
groceries.
paying the fine.
Right, the cost
because
of living
it's
there is
cheaper than
huge.
actually buying
And this
the
issue
green
has a
energy.
massive racial disparity.
The climate fund is
According to
getting
the data,
incredibly rich.
Black residents in the district
Precisely
rely on SNP
because
benefits
the green
10
energy
times
mandates are
more
failing.
than white
Precisely.
residents.
It is a completely
So this $40 million
perverse
was a
incentive.
targeted,
The government
legally
made the
funded
mandate so
lifeline
aggressive and the
for
market
the
is so
most
distorted
vulnerable people
that
in the
power
city.
companies
But
are
Mayor
just
Bowser
writing checks to the
completely
state
refused
instead
to
of going
implement the
green.
increase.
And the
She
stats
just said
on this
no.
are just
She
staggering.
cited
staffing
are.
and budget
In
issues, and
2022,
she wanted to
this
use the
revenue
$2
was
million in
$77
administrative
million.
funds for a
By
totally different
2025,
federal
it
program
jumped to
called Summer EBT.
$365
Right.
Now,
million.
Summer EBT helps
Wow.
school-aged
From
children, which is
$77 million
great,
to
but it completely
$365
leaves
million
out
in
the
3
adults
years.
and
Right,
senior
so now the
citizens
state
who
has
rely
this
on SNAP.
massive
And this action by the
accidental pot
mayor
of
triggered
gold.
another
It's
constitutional
supposedly for
crisis
green
locally.
projects.
D.C.
But remember,
Attorney
that
General
money didn't
Schwab
just fall
issued
out
a
of the sky.
memorandum
The
stating
utility
very
companies
clearly
paid those fines.
that the mayor cannot
And do you think those
unilaterally
massive
reroute
corporations
mandatory
just
funds.
ate that cost
Because the
out of
council
goodness of
passed
their
the
hearts?
law, the budget
Oh,
was
absolutely
approved,
not. They
the
passed
funds were
every single
mandatory.
penny of that
Exactly.
onto the customer.
Exactly.
council
it
responded
shows up
aggressively.
right on your electric bill.
They proposed
so
an
you,
emergency
the everyday
resolution
ratepayer,
titled the
are paying for
SNAP
the
Litigation
utility's
Authorization
failure to
Act,
meet a government
so they could
mandate.
sue
The
the
state
mayor
collects
over
your
the
money,
withheld funds.
drops it in
Yeah,
the
it's
safe, and says,
unprecedented.
But
look
wait,
at all
I
this
have to
cash
stop
we
you
have
there.
for the climate.
If the
Which
money was
brings us to
already
the rate.
legally approved and funded in the
Because
budget,
that money is
how
definitely
can an
not
executive
staying
just
in the
say
climate
no?
fund.
Not anymore.
Doesn't that
Enter
break
Governor
the basic
Wes Moore.
rules of how government
His
is supposed to work?
administration is staring down a
absolutely
projected
pushes the boundaries of how
$1.5
government
billion
functions.
budget deficit.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this
$1.5
raises
billion.
an important question
You can't
about
just
the
ignore
breakdown
a
of
hole that
democratic
deep.
norms.
You can't.
How so?
And
Well,
when government
the basic
overspends
mechanism
to
of
that
government
degree,
is that the
they start checking
legislative
under the
branch
couch
makes the
cushions for
laws
loose
and
change.
appropriates the money.
Except here,
The executive
couch
branch
cushion
is
the
supposed
Green
to
Energy
execute
Fund,
those laws.
and the loose change
When an
is hundreds
executive
of millions
decides
of
to
taxpayer
treat
dollars.
So what's the
mandatory,
actual
legally
proposal? How much are they
appropriated
taking?
funding as
The governor's
optional,
plan
it
diverts
undermines the entire
$292
legislative
million
process.
So basically means
directly
passing a
from the
law doesn't
safe
matter if
into
the
the
mayor
state's
decides
general
not to
fund.
do it, just to
Exactly.
balance the books.
And the
Just to
human
cover
cost
their
here is what
overspending.
matters most.
They
While
are
the branches
using
of government
energy
threaten
fines
each
to
other
pay
with
for
lawsuits
general
over who has the
government
authority to spend
operations.
the money,
Bureaucracy,
140,000
salaries, office
people
supplies,
are
you
missing
name
out
it.
on
But that's not
$47
even all of
extra
it.
dollars a
Yeah.
month
I read in
for
the sources
food.
there's
In a
also
city
a
where
rebate
groceries
scheme.
cost
Yes,
10%
this is the
more
part
than the
critics
national
are calling
average.
a political
Right,
sweetener.
the
They're
vulnerable
grabbing another
populations are the ones who pay the
$100
price for
million
these
out a
out of the
bureaucratic
fund
standoffs.
to give a
So what does this all
one-time
mean for you,
$40
the
rebate
listener?
to eligible
Why should
households.
you care about these
$40
bureaucratic
Earbucks.
battles?
So
It
let
all
me get this
comes
straight.
back to your
The
daily
state
life.
mandates drive up energy costs.
Because whether it's the price of
The
gas
utility
soaring
companies
past
pass those
$3.50
massive costs to you and
due to
me.
an overseas conflict,
Our bills go up
or
by hundreds of
CFO
dollars a year.
refusing to count
And then the
$180
governor takes a
million
chunk of our own money,
because the Senate vote
hands us
was
back
exactly
a crisp
one day late.
$40 bill,
$40 million
and basically
in vital
says,
food aid
"You're
being
welcome."
blocked by
That
an
is the
executive
exact
plan.
math.
These
It's
seemingly
wild.
dry
And if you look at the recent
technicalities
supplemental
dictate your
budget, they're
reality.
cutting or
If
shifting
you
another
work
$80
overtime in
million.
D.C.,
When you add all
that
this up, this
decoupling
rate
fight
depletes the
impacts your
fund by
next paycheck.
82%.
If you pay
82% of the
taxes,
fund wiped
your
out.
money is
Wiped
paying a
out.
$1,500
Leaving only about
daily
$164
fine
million for
while
the actual
politicians
green
hide
initiatives
documents.
it was legally meant
The
for.
arguments over
That
process
is not a trim.
are really arguments
That's
over
a total
power.
gutting.
And that power
And
determines
this is
your
where
taxes,
the politics
your
gets
services,
super interesting.
and your
Because
community.
you would assume the
about
environmentalist
this.
groups like the
If
Sierra
local leaders
Club
are
or
willing
the
to go to
Chesapeake
such
Climate
extreme
Action Network,
lengths, facing
you'd
lawsuits
assume
from
they'd
their
be
own
furious.
colleagues and
They
daily
were.
contempt of court
Initially,
fines paid by their
when this
constituents
first
just
leaked,
to
they
control
called
the
it
flow of information.
unacceptable.
They said it
What
was
does
a
that say
huge
about the
mistake
true
to use
currency
this
of
money
modern
as a
governance?
petty cash
We always
drawer.
say money is
But
power,
then
but
they
maybe
folded.
the
They
ultimate
completely
power is simply
folded.
deciding
Now
what the
they are
public is
actually
allowed to know.
supporting parts
That
of
is
the
a really
governor's
fascinating
spending
point to
plan.
end on.
Talk
When
about
the automated
strange
algorithm
bedfellows.
freezes the
Why
funds
on earth
and
would
the
they
mayor
do that?
refuses to
If
share
they
the raw
truly
data,
believe climate
the
change is
people
an
footing the
existential
bill are the
crisis,
ones left in the
why
dark.
let the state
Keep
raid the
questioning the
survival
information
fund?
around you
It's
and
just
pay attention
raw
to who's
political
trying to keep it a
calculation.
secret.
They know
Thanks for
voters are
joining
getting
us on this
crushed
deep
by
dive.
inflation.